Hello, everyone. My name is Golan. Today, we're going to explore the topic of digital signatures. Specifically, we'll talk about PE files. It's my first time here at ZIFCon. I'm very glad to be here. Glad to see you all. And let's begin. Now, it's only fair that you also get to know me. So a little bit about myself. My name is Golan Cohen. I work at Checkpoint, which is based in Tel Aviv, Israel. Today, I'm in charge of researching and protecting infections that originate from documents and email. But at the time of this research, I was a malware analyst. And as part of my job, I monitored suspicious files and our clients' telemetry. We also wrote protections and behavior rules to detect those threats. Also, I recently became a father, and here you can see my daughter helping me out with this presentation. And on my free time, I like to explore electronics. I like to take things apart, try to put them back together. And that's it. Let's begin. This is our agenda for the talk. At first, I'll explain how this research started, why we got into this. Next, we'll talk about the infection chain. This all started with a specific campaign that we found. So we'll go through each of the steps that the threat actor took. I'll explain what digital signatures are and why they're important, specifically again for PE files. We'll talk about the file signature vulnerability that was used in this case, which is very easy to exploit, and I'll show you how to do that. And at last, we'll summarize and I'll give my conclusions. So, how did this research start? Somewhere in September 2021, one of my teammates sent me this article. This article was written by SentinelOne Labs. And it was about a particular malware campaign, a Zloader campaign. We'll get to what Zloader is in a few slides. It's basically a banking Trojan. And just as a high overview of that, the previous campaign, it started with an installer. It's a teamviewer.msi. Next, we see that the threat actors ran some batch scripts. We see they disabled Windows Defender service and made some modifications to it. And at last, Zloader payload was injected into MSI exec using a specific malicious DLL. So just remember this high overview because we're going to see similar steps that are taken in the next campaign. This is also from this article. This is one of the scripts that the threat actors ran on the machine. This script was in charge of making some changes to Windows Defender, adding some exclusions to it. Sorry for the small font, but you can see some pretty malicious commands here, like trying to exclude all .exe files from being scanned by Windows Defender. Another funny thing that I found is, like many of us, we jump into writing code without reading the documentation first. They try to also exclude .exe and .dll files using a wildcard, but this argument does not accept a wildcard, so it's a funny thing that I found. So based on this script that we just saw, I wanted to search and try to look for similar scripts that are using the same type of attack. And I found another script that was similar but had some other commands. So this first detection that I found, we see also exclusion for MSI exec. If you recall, what the threat actors did is they injected the malicious payload into MSI exec. They disabled the scanning of downloaded files and attachments by Windows Defender. They disabled real-time monitoring and many, many other commands. We'll take a look at them in just a second. But from this first detection, we were able to map out the entire new campaign of Zloader. So this is what this new campaign looked like. We'll go through each of the steps briefly. At first, we see there's a process called Atera agent that ran on the machine. This Atera agent ran a few batch scripts. We see some downloading of executable files and DLLs. And at last, we see also a malicious DLL that injects Zloader into MSI exec. So what is Atera? Atera agent, simple Google search led us to Atera's website. Atera is a software company, also based in Israel, so close to home. And what they do is they do RMM software, which is for IT professionals. What is RMM? It's remote monitoring and management software. It allows them for remote access and controlling of their customers' computers. And you can also try this software for free. You can sign up on the website and get your free trial account. Oh, by the way, we'll use this mini-map on the top right to keep track of where we are in this infection chain. And just a nice anecdote, Atera has been known to use have been used previously by the Conti group as an additional backdoor to computers that they've infected, alongside with Cobalt Strike. So we signed up for a free account on Atera, and we wanted to take a look at the functions that you could do on computers that have this software installed on there. On the left here, you can see some of the functions that you can run on the machine. You can view the task manager. You can start and stop processes. You can download and upload files to the machine, run scripts, run PowerShell commands, and many other actions. And when you sign up for an account, you can also create a custom installer. This installer, when installed to the machine, will automatically connect that machine to your Atera account. So you will be able to control it. Next, we see the Atera agent process ran 2 scripts. This is one of them. It's called defender.bat, defender with 2 R's. That's how the adversaries called this script. And we can see it has about 10 more commands than the previous campaign that we saw. We see at the bottom the exclusion for MSI exec. And we see at the top that they still didn't read the documentation and tried to use wildcards. Next, we see a Atera agent calling the loader.bat script. Now, as it's pretty obvious, this script is in charge of loading another script. At the top, we see this new script being downloaded. And at the bottom, we see some commands. There's some implementation of a trial and error way to run this new script using self-ping instead of a sleep timer, a sleep function. Now let's take a look at what this new script that they downloaded does. Now this script is called new.bat, and here they made us our job a little bit easier for us, and they left us comments. So from those comments, we can easily see that this script first checks for admin privileges. If we don't have admin, then we kindly request the user to give us admin permissions. Once we have those permissions, we download a new script and run it with elevated permissions. Now this new script, this is where the money is. This is where the brain of the infection is. And we'll break it down into a few categories. At the top, we can see we're adding some more exclusions into Windows Defender. These exclusions are for certain folders where we will download some executable files and DLLs. We download those files into our app data folder. Next, we make some changes to the machine that we're infecting in order to make analyzing that machine just a little bit harder. We disable Task Manager, we disable command line, registry tools, and also disable Run from the menu. Next, we make some changes into the boot configuration. Now this line, we'll dive into this line in the next slide. It's a pretty important command. I'll skip it for now. And at last, we will take care of persistence and download a bat script into the startup folder. So what is this command that we skipped? We see this command is running mshta on a file, a DLL file that was just downloaded. Now, if you're not familiar with MSHTA, MSHTA is a program that is built into the operating system, to Windows, and it stands for Microsoft HTML Application. It's used to run HTA files. So the first question that we should be asking ourselves is, how is MSHTA run on a DLL file? It's supposed to run on a .hta file. Maybe this is actually an HTA file and they just changed the extension. No, it's a DLL file. So how is that possible? Now, the next question that we had is MSHTA is, as I said, built into the operating system inside the System32 folder, and it's a signed program by Microsoft. And when we took a look at the appcontest.dll, the file that was downloaded by the script, we saw that it was a DLL and it was also signed by Microsoft with a valid signature. But when running this command together, we get the malicious payload injected into MSI exec. So how is that possible? I don't think that Microsoft released a malware. So we wanted to take a look at this a bit further. But first, let's talk a little bit about digital signatures. So what's a digital signature? It's a mathematical scheme for verifying the authenticity of digital files. It allows us to confirm that the file originated from the signer and has not been tampered with or changed since it left the signer's computer. And there's this entity called certificate authority, which gives out and issues digital certificates in order to have us sign those files. So how does this whole process works? We have a user, a software developer. He wants to sign his software, so he contacts one of many third-party trusted certificate authorities and registers with them. Once he registers with them, he can get this digital certificate that will allow him to sign files. If we take another step and understand this process, then we have Joe. Joe is a software developer and he wants to sign his software. So he will use his personal private key, and using this private key, he can sign his file. Now we have Bob, who wants to use Joe's software and make sure that the software is valid and digitally signed by Joe. So he will take Joe's digital certificate that was given to him by the CA. On this digital certificate, it holds Joe's public key. And using that public key, he can decrypt the digital signature and make sure that the file is legitimate. Now let's see how this looks on the file itself. This is an abstract view of a PE file. The file is divided into the PE headers and the actual data that we're not going to go into the different sections because it's not relevant for our case here. But in general, we have the PE data and the PE headers and the data itself. PE headers hold information like time of when the file was compiled, entry point of the file, different addresses of the different sections, and so on. Now, when we want to sign this file, the first step that we need to take is we need to compute the digest of the file. Digest of the file is also called the image hash of the file. It's a little bit different than the actual hash of the file because it doesn't take into account the checksum and the signature data that is present on the file itself. So we compute the digest. Next, we will take this digest and encrypt it using our private key. And this data will be appended to the file, and along with some other metadata for the signature, this will be our signature, and now the file is signed. Now when Bob wants to verify that this file is signed, what's happening behind the scenes is, again, Bob will compute the digest of the file, excluding the signature data and the checksum of the file. He will take the signature and decrypt the signature using Joe's public key and compare the two. If they are the same, then the file is valid and digitally signed. Now, before we go back to our campaign, why are we even talking about digital signatures? Why is this important for us? You may be asking this. So, digital signatures have been used for evading detection. Many security products and EDRs rely on digital signatures to verify files. And as was said here in previous talks, if a file is signed by Microsoft, then it is a little safer. Some of the MITRE techniques that we can see that use digital signatures are masquerading. So you can append a digital signature to a file, just any digital signature. The file will show up as having a digital certificate. Even though this digital certificate is not valid, it will also show that. There's code signing. So some threat actors and adversaries have been known to make up bogus companies and sign up with CAs to receive digital certificates until they are revoked. Or there have been also instances of adversaries stealing legitimate digital certificates and using that certificate to sign their malware. And there are some sub-techniques that are also mentioned, like using system binaries that are signed in order to run malicious code. So let's go back to our campaign. We have MSHTA running on appcontest.dll, the DLL that was downloaded. If we look at the properties of the DLL, we see that it is signed and signed by Microsoft Windows. And we also see that the original file name of this DLL is appresolver.dll. So now we wanted to investigate and see what is this appresolver file. This file is also found on our computers. It's a DLL file that is in charge of resolving apps to extensions. So we found this file and we compared the two. So using this simple comparison, we see that the files are different in just a few places in the PE headers. On the left, you can see the original appresolver file, and on the right, you see the malicious DLL. And you can see that the malicious DLL has a VB script appended to it. In this VB script, you can see the malicious command that is used to inject the malicious payload into MSI exec. So this would explain how MSHTA ran this code. It looked for the script tag and ran the code that's inside it. But the question that we should be asking now is, how is that possible? How did the adversaries make a modification to the file while keeping the digital signature valid? So we need to ask ourselves, can we trust a file's digital signature? And let's see how they did that. So we go back to our abstract view of a PE file. Again, divided into the PE headers and the data itself. Inside the PE headers, we have a security directory. This directory holds information about the digital signature of the file. It has the size of the signature and its location on the file. In this case here, this piece file is not signed, so the signature size field inside the security directory is 0. Now, when we sign this file, this field will correspond to the actual signature size of the file. Now, once we make a change to the file, here we appended a malicious script. It could be any data that we append to the file. This digital signature is no longer valid. So how do we go about and fix this and make the signature valid? We can compute a new signature size. So what we do, we take the original size of the signature, we compute in bytes the length of the data that we appended to the file, and we just change this signature size inside the PE header, and all of a sudden our file is valid and digitally signed. So this is what happened in this particular instance. Now when we found this, we were ecstatic. We thought this is a great CVE that we can report, and we were very happy with it. But apparently This is not new. There are 3 different CVEs that talk about this issue. The first one is from 2012. Now, after the CVE in 2012, Microsoft actually released a fix for this issue in 2013. The fix actually makes a more exhaustive check for the digital signature, and it actually fixes this issue. So if it fixes the issue, how do we find this now in 2021? This was in 2021, but it's also relevant today. So what happened is in 2014, just a year later, Microsoft removed this fix as default behavior. You have to actively change a few registry keys in order to have this fix applied to your machine. What they said in their blog post is that impact to existing software could be high, and we prefer not to do this as default behavior. You just saw in the previous slide how easily exploitable this issue is, and as we said before, many security products rely on digital signatures. So let's go back to our campaign, just touch on a few more issues. What is Zloader? Zloader is a malware, banking Trojan / botnet. It borrows a lot of functionality from the infamous Zeus banking malware. They're very similar. It is a very stealthy malware, and they improve their evasion from one campaign to another. Very sophisticated. What's a banking malware? In just a few words, it's usually a banking Trojan. It's a file pretending to be something else. They perform man-in-the-browser attacks, so they inject code into your browser to look for certain websites where you would input sensitive information like your password and username. Usually it would be for banking sites. And they would send this information to their C2 servers. Just to sum up some of the defense evasion techniques that we saw in this campaign, there was this, at first we saw Atera, the use of legitimate software in order to backdoor the machine and install their scripts. We saw the impairing of defenses, all of those commands that we saw to turn off basically Windows Defender. Injection techniques to inject our malicious payload into MSI exec. System binary proxy execution is the use of MSHDA to run this malicious code. And we also see the use of a decade-old vulnerability that is not fixed by default. So now after we went through the entire campaign and we talked about the signature vulnerability, we had just one other question to answer. Where did Atera agent come from? Did the malicious actors install this on the machine themselves and connect it to their account? Were they able to take over an existing account and use that legitimate account to run those scripts? So we found out that there was, they installed it themselves, those actors. They used a file called java.msi, and Zloader has been known to masquerade itself as Java, Zoom, and TeamViewer, as we saw in the previous campaign. How do we find this out? When we signed up to the free account, we downloaded the custom installer that would connect the machine to our account, and we analyzed it. And what we found on this installer, we actually found the email that we used to sign up to the account, followed by the string integrator login. What this is basically when the installer runs on the machine, it creates a registry key. This registry key will hold the email of the account that that machine is connected to. And this gave us something tangible to look for when we wanted to find this suspicious installation. So we wanted to look for suspicious installations of Atera agent. And we found this installation right here. When the account name, account email is antique.corp@mail2.plus. Now, mail2.plus is a temporary email service that you can sign up. You don't even need to sign up. You just go on the website. You can specify whatever name you want for the email. It will be at mail2.plus. And you will have this email address for the next 15 minutes. Now, when we looked for this email address on VT, we actually found the java.msi. It only had 3 detections, and all those detections were for potentially unwanted software and remote agent installer. When we installed this MSI on our machine, we actually saw all of the infection chain running on our computer. So let's talk a little bit about the extent of the campaign. And we found out that this campaign affected over 2,000 victims from 116 different countries, mainly from the United States and Canada. Now, you may ask yourself, how did we find this out? Well, again, the attackers gave us clues. We found an open directory on the domain that they hosted their malicious files, and one of those files was entries. That's what it was called. It was basically a log of all of the infected machines that they were able to infect. For each machine, it had the date and time of infection, the IP address, country, and the user agent that was used in order to download the malicious files. So we parsed this file and created this graph. Let's talk a little bit about the impact that we had after publishing our research. So here at the top, you can see the malicious DLL with the script on VirusTotal. You can see that in December, this DLL had a sign tag on VirusTotal. And just a few months later, after we published our research, the sign tag is no longer present on this file. We contacted VirusTotal, and we were told that after our research was published, they decided to apply Microsoft's fix to their system, and now files that make changes to those to the signature for PE files will no longer show up as signed. So we're pretty proud of that. And also during the research, when we found the campaign, we were also in contact with Atera, and they blocked, of course, the malicious account and also the use of temporary email address to be signed up for that service. Okay, so let's summarize what we went through. Returning to our original question, can we trust a digital signature? We sort of can. You just don't know if there's any additional data that can be appended to the script. During our checks, we saw that most environments are vulnerable to this exploit. I haven't seen a single computer that applied Microsoft's fix by themselves. This, as I said, would require them to change only 2 registry keys. So we recommend that you apply this fix. And you previously saw how easy it is to exploit this vulnerability. It can be used for code execution, delivery, or data exfiltration as well. So, yep, that's it.